What's up, y'all? I'm here with my wife, Jamila.
Hello, one and all.
Yes, the one and all. And we are actually here to briefly, well, you never know what briefly means when it comes to me, but I feel like it'll be brief. Just kind of like say our thoughts on the new Netflix show, Messiah. So I think the first thing that I just want to say up front is that me and Jamila, I think that we both agree that the show was kind of like slow up to like the fifth or sixth episode, and that's like out of 10 episodes. Um, I would say that it was interesting still, like the first up to 5 6 episodes, but what made it even more slow, which is something that I wish I had known, is that the show isn't necessarily intended to give answers. That's what I'm seeing. Like I think that it's trying to tell a story in the purest sense of what they have created, and then it's leaving it up to your interpretation. It's like one of the biggest things that I believe the show is like pointing at is how what you believe is what becomes real. And so if you are like, because and one of the ways that it shows this actually is because the whole show is focused on that one character, Messiah, or in there they call him Al Masi. And it was interesting because even though like he was the focal point of everything and everybody was fixated on him, everybody had like different interpretations based off of what they already believed. So then you had the Islamic people, and there was actually two types of Islamic people there. There were the more like dangerous ones, and then there were the more like kind of what's the word, revolutionized, evolved forms, or more modern. I don't know. But there was two different type of like Islamic groups from what I could tell, and they saw the same Al-Masi or Messiah figure, and then they had thoughts on that. Then there were also like even like students who saw the same character, and then they had thoughts on him that were different from what the Islamic people thought. And then there was Christians, even like a pastor who saw him, and then had also his own thoughts. And then there was even the CIA and like non-believers who were seeing everything, and then they still had their own thoughts. And I think that based off of what these people believed about him, that's kind of like what happened. And one of the things that kind of like reminded me of was how when it came to Jesus in the Bible, a lot of what he did was based off of other people's faith. And so it, like, everybody knows about the verse where it says that a prophet is only without honor. A prophet is without honor at his own home. And one of the things that I've always found interesting about that verse is that when Jesus returned back to his hometown, and everyone was like, "Wait a minute, aren't you Joseph's son? Aren't you that kid that used to do this or used to do like?" Man, you leave for like just a little bit, and you come back and you feel like you're like a big shot now. Because of their lack of faith in him, then he was unable to perform many miracles. Like that's what the verse actually said. But so I feel like that goes to show, and even there's a verse also where there was a father who wanted his son to be healed, and Jesus pretty much like said like, well, if you believe, like, and there's countless times in the gospels where like Jesus was like, well, do you believe that I can do this? And I feel like that's one thing that Al-Masi kind of does too in there. He's like, well, who do you say I am? Or like, what do you believe about me? And based off of people's belief, then it's almost like a confirmation bias. Like, based off of what you believe, then that's what I'm going to create for you, if it's true. And if it's not true, then I just won't bother to prove myself to you. And that was another thing about his character, that he just didn't bother to try to prove himself to almost anyone, it seemed. While even though Jesus was like nonchalant from how I see him in the Bible, I think that he was more concerned with trying to prove himself to people. I also feel like Jesus was a lot more extroverted. than Al-Masih was. Like everywhere that he went, he was engaging with people, he was interacting with people, he was doing this, he was doing that. He said more words. He spoke in parables, not just like, mysterious, ambiguous like phrases and stuff like that. And he did give answers even when he was giving indirect answers. But Al-Masih was just like super like to himself, hiding out in his hotel room or whatever, and he would only engage like every now and then. So I feel like those are like some distinctions between the Jesus to how I see him in the Bible and then Al-Masih. But yeah, so that was like a few of my original thoughts just strung into a quick 5 minutes. And what would you have to say about all of that?
About what you just said?
No, about everything in general. If you want to allude to anything that I said, that's also cool. But I was just throwing out my line of thinking.
Well, yeah, don't watch this show if you're looking for a good time. That's not what this is for. But I mean, it is very thought provoking, and I don't know. I feel like Denzel pretty much covered everything. Yeah.
What did you said that there was a main lesson that you had received from it. So like how I said that what I got from it is that what you see is what you believe is what will become real. Jamila actually had mentioned what she thought of the show as well. I can't quite remember exactly what it was, but it was profound.
I said that I think that the message of the show was is that we all need something to believe in. So like the creator of the show, I don't think that he's a Christian or whatever. Which, by the way, the show is like mature, and it's not mature for Passion of the Christ reasons, like a lot of blood. It's like mature for,
There's
why
a
anything
lot
else
of
would be
F-bombs, and there's some sex scenes. I think only one or two, but yeah.
Yeah, so the guy who created it isn't a Christian to my knowledge. And I think the spiritual climate of our culture right now is a lot of just like searching and, like this is for me and this is for me and this is how I connect to, my higher power or whatever. And so I think that this show was just showing like, honestly, it could be looked at as we're all stupid, or it could be looked at as like we are all what we believe in. So like how Denzel was saying, everybody had a different perspective or whatever. Like your perspective of quote unquote the Messiah was representative of the type of person that you are and what you needed to believe in. And so if you believed in him, then of course, things that he does or say are going to seem one way. And if you don't, then of course things that he does or say is going to seem another way. And I think that was just pointing out, like I said, like the spiritual climate of where we're at right now, where everybody's, like, oh, I'm going to do me and you do you or whatever, like, or, even like, people who don't really claim to be super spiritual religious, like atheists, for example, and they're just like, oh, well, atheists who aren't spiritual, they're just like, oh, well, like, I understand that, or people who aren't in an organized religion, actually, I understand that this is what you need to like get through, or this is what you need to feel this type of way, or whatever. And so I think that's really what the show was highlighting, or like partially like its agenda was just to show like everybody just believes whatever they need to believe to get through life. So,
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a really really good
or to
points
make
being made.
sense of their life.
To make sense of their life. Yeah, I think that's what it mainly is. Like you, and it's not even mainly like I think there are a lot of people who just blindly believe things. Because there's I feel like there's two different types of faith. There's like faith that's like backed with reasoning, even if it's not necessarily like facts, but it's like reasoning that leads up to a certain faith. And there's just blind faith where it's like, I don't know, I just believe it. Like there's no reasoning that I have behind it. I just kind of like adopted this belief. I would like to think of myself and also Jamila as the former, where it's like it's backed with reasoning and stuff. And I think that's a good point that you bring in. Like in the show, depending on what you already believed and who you are, the way that you viewed a lot of what Al Masi did reflected that, and so everybody saw him doing the same things, but then one person interprets it as like, oh, this is just a show, it's just this. Another person's like, yo, no, this is a miracle, he's trying to help people, he's trying to do this, he's trying to do this. Another person's like, oh yes, he's here to help us, do that. And it's like all like they don't tell us what his actual plan was. I think that's what I mean by like, the agenda of the show. It's leaving it up to you. It's more of a discussion starter where it's like, okay, so how do you see this? And it does well with having you kind of like tailgate and like follow alongside the rest of the characters in the show, because the whole entire show, everybody's just trying to figure out, yo, who is this man? What is he doing? What does he stand for? Is he even really Muslim? Is he even really Christian? Is he anything? Is he delusional? Stuff like that. And he doesn't really give like straightforward answers. He's like very very mysterious. Like in my opinion, more mysterious than the Jesus in the Bible is. Because like I said, like I believe that if it was like Jesus in the Bible, he would be a lot more talkative. He would speak to a lot more people, just engage more and interact more. Even though Jesus in the Bible was like cryptic with his parables and stuff like that, like this man is on a whole other level from what I saw. But based off of how people viewed him, that kind of like reflected where they stood with him, and then they even things that they projected onto him. And so I agree with Jamila, like it's kind of like showing how like we all need to try to make sense of our lives. Like we have this need to make sense of our lives, and especially things that are just unexplainable. And I think it's a good way of showing like how the way that you perceive the world is what you're also going to project onto the world. And the way that you perceive people is the way that you're going to project onto people. If I, for example, believe that Jamila is a malicious person, that's just always like, out to get things for herself and whatever, even if she does a good deed, then I'm going to automatically like interpret it as like, oh well, what's her angle, what's this, what's that. I'm not going to trust anything that she's doing. And she could really be doing it for the reasons that I believe, or she could really be doing it because she just genuinely wants to help people. But it wouldn't matter, because at the end of the day, it's not necessarily reality we're looking at. Or the thing is, we are looking at reality, but through the lens of our subjectiveness. And our subjectivity clouds reality. And then we project onto reality what we would say our reality is. And then if our reality isn't matching up with other people's reality, that's when we have things clash. And so I feel like this show really did well in portraying that. And if I were to watch it again, except this time knowing what I know, I would have more just enjoyed the ride and like been in perceiving mode rather than decision making mode or judging mode, trying to decide like who is this guy or whatever. Rather, I would have just taken in all of the aspects in the information and just allowed it to like simmer in my head instead of trying to like reach certain conclusions. And I feel like that's what a lot of people were assuming was gonna happen. Like we thought that we were gonna have like an inside scoop on this man, like what he's really doing, and we would be like the audience that are watching and like, no, he's a fake, or no, he really is the Messiah. And then but the people in the show are the ones who are unaware. But in actuality, it turns out like we are almost in the same boat as the people in the show are, all the way up to a certain episode and at certain moments of things. But all in all, it was, in my opinion, creative. And I think that if Jesus were to return today, a lot of that would have happened. Like the CIA definitely would have been stalking Jesus, thinking that he's starting a cult of some sort. A lot of social justice would have been going on. They'd probably try to detain him, but then not really know exactly why. Definitely would have thought that he was delusional. You would have people saying like, "Oh no, all of these tricks that he's doing is not really miracles. He just did this, like he just did this magic trick or whatever. He's just trying to get attention," which is also funny because like, spoiler alert, in the movie, in the show, the Al-Masi had a brother who saw Al-Masi as just an attention seeker. Like, he didn't believe anything that Al-Masi did. It's like, yeah, ever since we were little, he just always liked being in the center of attention and stuff like that. And the reason why I thought that was interesting was because the biblical Jesus also had a brother, James. And James didn't believe that Jesus was the Messiah up until Jesus resurrected from the dead 3 days later. And then it's like, whoa. And then he wrote the book of James. And so like that's very interesting because you can only imagine how James, I'm sure, saw his brother do all of these miracles and still was like, man, no, he's always wanting attention. He does this miracle, he does that miracle, he does this miracle. Even at the end of Matthew, I think, one of the Gospels, it says that like they couldn't even record all of the miracles that Jesus performed because it just would have filled up a whole entire like book. But like Jesus performed so many miracles, and it's just crazy how his own brother didn't believe it until finally he resurrected from the dead 3 days later, and then he's like, oh shoot, whole time my brother is the Messiah. and like that was the last miracle that finally like did it. But since he already had that confirmation bias and said that he's not the Messiah, then everything that Jesus did could have appeared as like showboating and stuff like that. So I think that, yeah, we can look at it as like, pay attention to the way that you view things in the world, because the way that you're viewing things in the world is going to shape how the world is to you. Do you have anything else to add on that?
I don't think so.
All right. Well, yeah, so anyway, let us know what you think. Check out the show if you want to, or don't check it out if you don't want to. But yeah, I would love to hear y'all's thoughts, especially like, from different faiths and everything. Like those of you especially who are watching that are like Islamic, definitely I would love to hear your thoughts on the show as well. Like I've heard that the Christian Messiah is the Islamic Antichrist. That was a rumor that I heard from 2 different sources, and I feel like I'm not really familiar with that, so if somebody can clarify that a little bit more, like that would be dope. But yeah, I think that's everything, and if you don't have anything more, done.